Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a beautiful Tuesday morning, right before Christmas. We are so excited. I'm so excited for today's session because we really get to dive into some of the new capabilities that Trafera has as a company since we acquired a great company that you may or may not be familiar with, Now Micro. And with that is coming all sorts of expertise and some great folks, including my friend Tiernan, who's going to tell us a little bit more about that acquisition, and my new friend John also, who is going to dive into the subject for today, which is Windows 10 reaching the end of its life. But before that, I just have a few housekeeping things. And if you have been to one of these coffee and combos, I'm sure you know the drill. I see some familiar names. We've got Amy and Bob and Brian and all sorts of folks who are with us all the time. So thanks for being here again. But here are my housekeeping things. If you have questions throughout the session, feel free to ask them in the chat. If you're unfamiliar with the Zoom platform, that chat button is going to be in that bottom bar. It's just got a pretty standard chat icon above it. You can head in there, you can ask your questions. I'll be watching that throughout the session and getting your questions to John. Otherwise, if we miss anything, we'll hit them at the end during Q&A. The second piece is, if you want that coffee, which why wouldn't you? It's cold outside. We need that warming goodness this time of year. If you want that coffee, stick around until the end. We have a quick exit survey for us to learn a little bit more about you and helps us know how to best follow up with you after the session. So stick around, do that. You'll get your coffee then within the next 24-ish hours. All right, that is all for me. You never come here to listen to me. So I'm going to pass it over to my friend Tiernan, who can really get us started.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this webinar. As Kate mentioned, Trafera and Now Micro have recently joined forces through an acquisition and merger. I do also see some familiar names on this call for people that I've either spoken with or worked with in the past. Much like Trafera that you guys have come to know and love on the Google and Chrome side of things, Now Micro has traditionally focused on Windows-based hardware and software solutions, predominantly in K-12 education space, but also higher ed and state and local government. Again, complementary to the existing offerings that Trafera has, we are a hardware provider as well as software and services to help you guys facilitate essentially an entire device lifecycle management platform and practice. John Anderson is one of my senior systems consultants and pretty much subject matter expert on everything Windows. So I will turn this over to the smart people shortly to have him pretty much give you our Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration strategy. As Kate said, please interrupt John with any questions. We want this to be interactive. We want you to have the best experience and get as much out of this as possible. You're not going to throw John off. He does this for a living. So please interrupt him with any questions or any clarifications that you need. As high level or technical as you want to get, we're here to help. So again, nice to meet all of you. We're very excited to bring a Microsoft and Windows-based practice to the Trafera portfolio and help support their existing client base and maybe bring on some new ones along the way. Thanks, Kate, and over to you, John.
Thanks, Tiernan. So as Tiernan said, my name is John Anderson. I'm a senior systems consultant here at Now Micro and now Trafera. Let me switch ahead here. So we're going to be talking about Windows 10. So yeah, I'm a senior systems consultant here at Trafera. I've been doing consulting in the Microsoft world for 15 years now. Started out with Configuration Manager 2007, 2012 years ago, and have kind of moved into Intune, Defender, Azure, all the cloud stuff of today. And the Windows updates, migrating new versions of Windows has always been a popular topic. My main focus is on management of identities and devices, got the Microsoft certifications, all that good stuff. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to go through system requirements for Windows 11, how to find out which of your devices are compatible with Windows 11, options for upgrading devices to Windows 11, and then we'll look at some troubleshooting and customizations, and lastly touch on a few new features that are available. So I'll go through these slides fairly quickly. It's kind of just reiterating what Tiernan said. Now Micro, previously we identified ourselves as like a device lifecycle company, so helping with purchasing devices, getting those devices imaged and deployed, existing management of those devices, and then even recycling or decommissioning of devices at the end of their life. We also offer a in-house developed tool called DICE, which is primarily an asset management tool, but also has optional capabilities for other tools such as real-time geolocation, system level remote control, vPro integration. So it can be a great tool to extend management of devices that go off-site or maybe managed with a cloud-based solution like Intune. So yeah, advertisements out of the way. Let's get into the meat of the presentation. So why do you need to upgrade to Windows 11? Everyone has loved Windows 10 so far. So what's the reason to go? And the main reason is the top bullet point here. Windows 10 reaches the end of its servicing period in October 14th of 2025. But beyond that, Windows 11 does also offer improved tools and features, specifically in the security area. It also gives you compatibility with the latest apps and hardware. There's certain new software and hardware that just doesn't run that well on Windows 10. Improved Copilot integration for those of you that are excited about the new AI feature. And then an improved user experience. Finally, we have a tabbed file explorer. The Windows Snap is much better. Being able to use virtual desktops. It's all improvements in my opinion. So the first thing that most people encounter when they're looking to move to Windows 11 is the system requirements. And the system requirements have been beefed up quite a bit for Windows 11. There's a whole list of them, which I've included in a link in this slide deck, and you'll be able to access the slide deck afterwards to get some of these links. But the main requirements that trip people up are the three I've kind of called out here. So the processor, the TPM, and then the firmware settings, UEFI and secure boot. So the processor is kind of the main one that you can't really do anything about. Windows 11 has a requirement that's in general Intel 8th gen or newer processors or Ryzen 2000 or newer processors. And if you've got an older processor than that, your device just will not support Windows 11 without being, physically replaced with a new piece of hardware. TPM, again, if the device does not have a TPM, it won't support Windows 11. You would have to add a TPM chip. Your device may have TPM and it's just an older TPM 1. Version. Oftentimes you can go into the BIOS and update that to the TPM 2.0. And then UEFI and secure boot. Any relatively modern piece of hardware will have options to turn on UEFI and secure boot. So if you have devices where those are off, they can be turned on. So really the only hard blocking upgrade requirement is that processor. And I have again included a link there to the list Microsoft maintains of all of the supported processors. So if you're curious if your devices are on there, you can check that link. So Windows compatibility reporting. So how do you figure out if my devices are compatible or not, or which ones have TPM or secure boot or processor issues? So there's several ways to do that. I'm going to cover the Microsoft management methods of doing that. So anyone out there that has Configuration Manager, Intune, or Azure integration will be able to use these tools. So within Configuration Manager, there's a dashboard you can look at, as well as some queries. In Intune, there's some reports, and out in Azure, there's also a Windows Update for Business report. If you don't have either of those tools, though, this information does also get stored in the registry. So you could use whatever management tool you do have to just query that registry information. So let's take a quick look at that in a demo here. So I'm first going to go to Configuration Manager. So in Configuration Manager, if you go to the software library and there's this Windows 11 upgrade readiness dashboard, you can just get some general information. We see all the system requirements for Windows 11. We see which of our devices have already upgraded. But then down here, we see which of our devices are ready for an upgrade and which of our devices cannot upgrade. And you can click into the cannot upgrade to get a listing of devices. And then over on the right here, you'll see the reasons why that device is unable to upgrade. So in this example, this device can't upgrade because of the TPM, the UEFI, and the memory. So there's 3 system requirements that this device is missing. And then I could, take action to see about resolving this device and trying to get it compatible. In addition to Configuration Manager, there is reports out in Intune, which I just took some screenshots of here from my demo environment. So there's a report you can run to show the feature update status of all your devices. You can see if they're pending or installed or can't upgrade. There's a report you can run to see the compatibility. So the same type of report that we see in Configuration Manager. So you'd get a listing of your hardware, the model, the version it's currently on, and then what Microsoft thinks you need to do, whether it's replacing the device or doing an upgrade. And then you get again, the same listing of what is it that's incompatible. So in these cases, we see processor family, TPM, secure boot, driver issues, that type of thing. So and then the last report out here gives you a listing of the potentially incompatible components that were found across your devices. So we see a listing of like drivers here that Microsoft has identified as potentially causing a problem, and we would need to upgrade those drivers before proceeding. Also out in Intune is the endpoint analytics node, which gives you that same type of information. So if you're not sending the telemetry required for the built-in reports, you can also use endpoint analytics and get the same compatibility information where we see TPM, CPU family, et cetera, telling us why the devices aren't compatible. And then finally, there's a Windows Update for Business feature report in the Azure portal that also tells you the same type of thing. So we get alerts about devices, and then this is again clickable into to get a detailed list of the devices and why or why not they're compatible with Windows 11. And then the last thing, so that's Configuration Manager and Intune, looking at the reports out there. But like I said, there is also a registry location. So on every Windows 10 device, there's this scheduled task. So it's in the task scheduler under Microsoft Windows Application Experience, and it's called the Microsoft Compatibility Appraiser. This runs every day on your devices and basically just checks the compatibility of the device with the various different versions of Windows 11 that are out there. And the results of this scheduled task are written to the registry on the device in this path here, which I have included in the slide deck. And you can see there's an entry for each different version of Windows that's available out there. So we see Windows 11, 22H2, 23H2, 24H2, and we get a bunch of information about the results of that scan. So we can see if there's like a safeguard hold in place, the last time the scan ran. But the most important thing to look at is this red reason value. So this is the one that would mark if there is a blocking upgrade. So like TPM processor, that type of thing. In this case, it says none. So this device is compatible and ready to upgrade to Windows 11. But if you want to inventory this reg key through whatever other tool, you could identify devices that do have a blocking reason. And here I've again noted the path to that scheduled task and the path to the registry key. So now we are able to identify incompatible devices. So what are the options that we have for those devices that are incompatible? So the first thing we'd want to do is resolve compatibility issues if possible. So like I mentioned, maybe the TPM is a problem. Let's see if we can upgrade or enable the TPM if it's disabled. Maybe we can turn off legacy boot and enable UEFI and secure boot on devices. If memory is a problem, maybe we can add more memory to some of the hardware or add a bigger hard drive if that's a problem. If we can't do that, say like the processor is just too old, then obviously another option would be purchasing new hardware. And I would mention Trafera is a proud partner of Lenovo for Windows 11, so we'd recommend you taking a look at their hardware. But yeah, it's not always necessarily feasible to upgrade all your hardware right away either. I know, many of you are working within a set budget. So what are a few of the other options we have? So there's Microsoft has released a program called the ESU, or Extended Security Updates Program. This is similar to a program they've had in the past for Windows 7, Windows 8 end of life, even some of the server versions, where they offer security updates for Windows for additional years, but you have to pay for it. So what they're going to be doing for Windows 10 is offering up to 3 years of additional updates. These are normally very expensive updates, but fortunately for education customers, Microsoft has heavily discounted these updates. It'll be $1 per device to get the updates for the first year, $2 per device for the second year, and $4 per device for the third year. And what you would do after purchasing this licensing is you would get like a license key, and you would install that key on all your devices. And then that would allow those devices to receive the extended security updates. So then at that point, your devices could continue to get updates, directly from Microsoft or from Configuration Manager or from WSUS, just like normal, but they would be those extended security updates. I would stress that this is a temporary solution, though. I've often seen people in the past sign up for the extended security updates program and just kind of forget about it for a few years, and then all of a sudden they're back in the same spot all over again. So if you do decide to go down this route, I would definitely make it a priority to start looking at replacing the hardware that you've needed to do these extended security updates on. I have included links again in the slide deck here to the Microsoft documentation that talks about signing up for the ESU program, as well as the discounted pricing for education. If you don't want to do extended security updates, or maybe you have certain devices that are not so much regular end user devices, there is also the Windows 10 LTSC, or long-term servicing channel build. This is normally a build of Windows that's not really intended for standard end user devices. You'd more use it on like IoT type devices, maybe a system running like your door locks or something. But it can be used in a pinch as an end user system. So if you do have licensing for this under your Microsoft licensing agreement, you could also install this. And depending on the version you install, it does continue to get security updates until late into the 2020s. Again, not an ideal option, but it is better than running a device that doesn't get security updates at all. And then finally, we can install Windows 11 in an unsupported configuration. So I've included a link here where Microsoft does talk about options for installing Windows 11 on unsupported hardware. They do definitely call out that it's not recommended. They do talk about at the very start of the article in bold that the device is not guaranteed to receive future security updates. So Microsoft, reserves the right to just stop deploying updates to those devices at any time. You also won't be able to get new feature updates on incompatible hardware. You'd have to re-image the device each time there's a new feature update. And then you may just have app compatibility, system instability. I've definitely seen devices that are running unsupported Windows 11 just having random blue screens. So if you are going to go down this route, I'd recommend doing extensive testing on the hardware that you have to make sure it's relatively stable. So that's the options for dealing with the incompatible devices. Any questions in the chat yet, or no?
No questions so far.
Okay. So yeah, now that we've identified the incompatible devices and looked at the options for resolving those compatibilities, let's talk about how do we actually do the upgrade. So I'm going to look at a few methods here. Again, using Configuration Manager to do the upgrade, using Windows Update for Business to do the upgrade, and then just talking about a manual upgrade option. So here's where we can look at a demo. Let me go into Configuration Manager again. So in Configuration Manager, you've got a few options for doing the upgrade. You can bring in downloaded media as an operating system upgrade package. So you download the media from the Microsoft Volume Licensing Service Center, import it into Configuration Manager here, and then you can incorporate that into an in-place upgrade task sequence. So this task sequence would actually run the upgrade operating system step. And then you could have several other things run afterwards. So maybe you want to have it do some customization of window, customizing the start menu or changing the default desktop background, that type of thing. So that can all run together in the upgrade task sequence. I generally don't like using this as an option as much because I don't find it to be as nice of an end user experience, but it does give you a little bit more control over the whole process if you need that more detailed control. The method I prefer is just to actually use the software update. So you can download the Windows 11 upgrade as just a software update through the software update management point here. And then you could deploy that out to your devices and it'll install just like an update from Windows. This could also be done with a standalone WSUS server if you're using that to manage your updates as well. And then the end user experience for this is the user has the update install more in the background while they're using their system. And once the reboot is required, that's the point where the user is notified about the upgrade and they can do the update or the restart and just wait for the upgrade to complete. And we'll look at a video in a minute of what that looks like. So that's the two main options through Configuration Manager. There's also Windows Update for Business that I mentioned. So if we flip over to Intune here. So I'm going to look in Intune next. In Intune, you have your Windows update policies and update rings. So if I look at my update ring I have here, we're configuring the Windows Update for Business settings. And anyone that's not familiar with Windows Update for Business, really what it is you're configuring your devices to point at Microsoft for updates, but you get some additional control over how those updates install. So for instance, you can choose the amount of days you want to defer the updates after they come out. In this example policy, I have it set to 0, but say I set it to 2 days. You know, updates would come out on patch Tuesday and devices would wait 2 days before they get them. We can say have deadlines here as well. So after the device does see the updates, how long does it wait to install them? And then a grace period after it installs them, how long does it wait to reboot? And in addition to those settings, we also have the feature update settings where we can deploy out feature updates. So I've got a feature update policy here for Windows 11 23H2, which I might just target at all my devices if I want them to go to Windows 11 23H2. I might also have another one for 24H2 that I target at just like a subset of devices if I want to test 24H2 on just a few devices before I send it out to everything. So Intune makes it really easy to manage the Windows Update for Business settings. I'd recommend if you have the capability to use Intune, go down that route because you have a lot more options in here, in addition to like reporting options. If you don't have Intune set up or it's not in the cards to have it set up before your deadline for Windows 11, you can also configure these settings in traditional group policy. So I have a policy pulled up here. You can see under administrative templates, Windows components, Windows Update, there's all of the same settings where we can set deferral periods, deadlines, a target feature update version. You just don't have as much kind of granularity with targeting and configuring the fine-grained settings in group policy as you do with the Intune settings. And then the last thing to mention is just that you can do a manual upgrade. So if you download the media from Microsoft, say like the Windows 11 setup media as the ISO, and then you extract that ISO file, within there will be a setup.exe, and you can just manually run that to do the upgrade. You could also script that. So if you have another management solution, you could push out that media with the setup.exe scripted to do the upgrade. So several options available to actually perform the upgrade. So let's take a look at what that upgrade looks like. So I've taken a short video here where I ran the upgrade on a device and sped up the process. And this is going to be a device that is getting the upgrade directly from Microsoft. So this is a device that's managed by the Windows Update for Business settings. So we do a check for updates here, and this is a Windows 10 device again. It sees the Windows 11 23H2 update there, starts downloading it. After the download's completed, it goes to installing it. Then once the install is done, there's a pending reboot, and I get notified about that pending reboot via this pop-up in the lower right-hand corner. So your users will see something like this. You know, your organization requires your device to restart. They've got the option to pick a time to schedule it later or restart now. I'll just do restart now. So the device now goes through the reboot process, finishes the upgrade, and then we're back at the sign-on screen and can log in again. So obviously I sped that up quite a bit, but the total time that it took, so the actual time that it spent to download the update was about 5 minutes, and that'll again depend on your internet speed. And then the initial installation was about 25 minutes. So between the download and install, that was about a half an hour. But the nice thing with doing it this way is this whole initial download and install process happens behind the scenes. The user doesn't even notice that it's happening. I see it here because I have the Windows Update screen brought up, but if I had this closed, it would still just be happening behind the scenes. The only part that the user sees is once there's a reboot required. And then this reboot process only took 3 minutes on my demo device. So Microsoft has done a really good job of moving the bulk of the upgrade process to the initial phase, and then having the part where the user is interrupted be relatively short. So that's what the upgrade process looks like. I also wanted to do a few notes on just troubleshooting an upgrade. So again, there are Intune and Azure reports to troubleshoot the upgrades, which I can show, again, a screenshot of one of those. There is a tool called Setup Diag that you can use to troubleshoot the upgrade as well. So this is a tool that's now included in Windows, but you can also download it from Microsoft, and I've included a link to do so there. And this tool is very useful for troubleshooting, because if you've ever tried to troubleshoot the Windows upgrade process before, you'll know that there's a whole host of different log files scattered across the operating system, and it can be very hard and kind of cryptic to figure out what they're saying. This tool will parse all of those log files and give you just a condensed output that tells you this is what the problem was with the upgrade. There's also, like I mentioned, log files if you want to dig into them directly, and error codes. Many of the error codes you'll get will be those cryptic, 0x some number error codes. Fortunately, Microsoft does maintain a list of all the Windows Upgrade log files and a list of all the common upgrade error codes, which I've included links for both of those as well. And then further technical details on the upgrade process, I've included a link for that as well. It's a Microsoft documentation page that kind of does a deep dive into the technical details of the upgrade process. So that can be useful to read if you want a better understanding of how that works. Upgrade errors demo. Let's see, I don't really have a setup diag to look at for that right now, but I do want to pull up that one slide here. So this report out in Intune, you can run to show the status of the feature updates. So we can see the updates were installed or the updates are scheduled. This will also show if an update has failed. And that report in Intune, you can find just under reports and Windows updates. And then it would be the Windows feature update report. In addition to that, there's this report out in Azure, the Windows Update for Business report, which you can also use to track the status of the upgrade deployment. So you can see if devices have a safeguard hold. If there's devices that did have an error, you can click into them here and view more details about that error. And then again, see just the total status of your devices. So I'd really recommend taking advantage of the Intune reports and the Azure Windows Update for Business report. And then again, individually on devices, using the Setup Diag tool to troubleshoot is very useful. Okay, so then back to, oh, not that, I'm gonna go to here. Okay, so now that we've got Windows 11 upgraded, I just wanted to mention a few things about customizing Windows. So Windows 11 is pretty similar to Windows 10 in how it can be customized. There's a few things that are different, but all the common things: start menu layout, taskbar layout. There are a few new things in Windows 11: Copilot, the Windows recall feature, and like the widgets that you might want to modify or remove. Just for reference, I did include some of the details of this in the slide. We're not going to go into the weeds with the details of this in the presentation today, but I did include it in the deck for reference. And again, if you guys are looking for assistance with this, or you want to have somebody a trusted advisor to bounce some ideas off of, we've done this a whole bunch of times and are happy to get on a call and listen to your particular situation. So the start menu customization, you can set it as a default by just copying the start layout into the default user profile, or you can also set it with a policy. Same thing with the taskbar. You can copy a default layout into the default user profile or set it with a policy. The shortcuts, you've got options for controlling the widgets app, the Copilot app, and the recall app. And then quick customization demo. So I did just have a policy here. So I go back over here to Intune, Windows configuration. So I've made a Windows 11 customization policy out in Intune, and you could do the same thing in group policy as well, where you can say set default application associations, or maybe I want to set a default start menu layout or default start pins. I want to turn off the widget app. I want to disable the Copilot app. So you've got options to do all of those things. Though, again, doing them with an Intune policy or a group policy is going to set them in stone and not allow the user to change them. So if you do want to set them as like a default or a preference, that's usually more easily done at initial system setup. So whether you're deploying with ConfigMan or Intune, we generally want to have like a script that goes through and copies the defaults into the user profile. So back to the slides here. The last thing I wanted to call out was just a few new features in Windows 11. So the start menu and taskbar are a bit different. Context menus are different. The tabbed file explorer, the Windows Snap, and the settings app. So let's jump back over to a Windows 11 device here. So my favorite thing is the file browser. You can open tabs up at the top of it now here, and it makes it much easier. You don't end up having like a million file explorer windows open all over your system. In addition to that, when you right click on an object, you have this new looking context menu, and they have the icons up at the top here for, copy, paste, delete, all that kind of stuff now. If there is something that you don't see in this menu, you can still down at the bottom here hit show more options to view the old style of context menu, which does have a few things that don't show up in the new one yet. There's also the window snapping feature. So if you take a window and drag it up to the top of the screen, you get these detailed snap options where you can have all sorts of different configurations for the window. So let's do like this. We can open a edge window and snap that on the left. And then the cool thing with this is you can go to something else like the store, and you could restore the window. Like I could restore just the edge window, or I could restore the group, which restores both windows. So cool features for doing the desktop management and window snapping. And then finally, the settings app. So Microsoft is still working on moving all of their stuff from the old control panel into the settings. And you'll find a lot more stuff has moved into settings in Windows 11. Control panel is still here and does still have things in it. But for some of these, when you click into them now, it's more just a link into the settings app. Not sure what the time frame is yet on getting rid of the control panel, but that is the plan apparently. So we'll have to see. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming to the presentation today. So that was kind of a quick look at Windows 11. What are the requirements for it? How can you identify devices that are compatible? How can you actually do the upgrade on the devices? And then what does Windows 11 look like, and how do you customize it after it's installed? So again, more details on any of that, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, okay, so we have one pretty simple question here in the chat. Let me just go find it. Okay, do you have a link with the download or instructions for pushing the upgrade through Configuration Manager software updates?
Yeah, I don't know that Microsoft has a link directly. There's a few different Microsoft Docs pages that talk about that process, but there's not like a consolidated one that just shows the whole thing end to end. So I guess no, the answer is no, I don't have just a single link I can send to you for that. It would have to be a few links.
All right, thank you. Any talk of Microsoft possibly delaying the Windows 10 deadline?
I have not heard anything about the deadline being delayed, especially since they came out with the extended security updates program. I think the extended security updates program was the response to a lot of people saying, hey, we're not going to be ready. And especially they were hearing from a lot of education customers that they weren't going to be ready just because there is a lack of funding, traditionally in the education sector. And then that's why the extended security updates program is so cheap for education. For reference, for not education, the extended security updates is like $60 per device for the first year, whereas for education, it's $1 per device for the first year. So it's very, very cheap in comparison. So yeah, I'd be very surprised if Microsoft extends the deadline for Windows 10 end of life.
Caleb has been talking in the chat about some issues with Windows 11 that his school or his folks at his organization have been dealing with copy and paste in the right clicking and copy and pasting and having kind of a
So that,
experience.
yeah, that was a common complaint is, so I've actually got the 24H2 build of Windows 11 installed here. In old versions of Windows 11 before 24H2, when you would right click on something to copy it, it was just an icon at the top here with no words. So in 24H2, they have actually added words to these icons, so you don't have to know them just off the icon. It does now actually have a word associated with it, which was something that a lot of people were asking for.
I know for myself, I completely missed those icons without the words under them for a very long time.
Yes, so the words are finally back. We've restored words to the context menu.
Do we know of any, let me see, do we know of any incentives around deployment or management services that MSFT or other OEMs are offering that we could use under our own services for customers? Oh,
I'm not sure on that one.
Okay, that's from Kevin. Hey, Kevin. We'll get you an answer for that, Kevin. All right. So that is all the questions that I see here in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and launch our exit survey while we have some kind of closing thoughts here. So again, just a reminder, take that exit survey before you head out. It's our way of collecting some information on you, just so we know how to best follow up after the session. So do that. It also gets you your free coffee. Oh, I see another question. Has anyone had issues with the network drivers after upgrading Windows 11?
Yeah, I mean, anyone else in the chat, feel free to share your experience. I have had driver issues when helping other clients do upgrades. Generally, we try to use that compatibility reporting, like I was showing in Intune and Configuration Manager, to identify those potential issues ahead of time and do the upgrades beforehand. But I have had a few cases where we've done an upgrade and it turns out that one of the drivers did have an issue. In which case, then we've just deployed an update for that driver using, whatever management tool the client was using.
Great. Okay, now I think that's all the questions. So one thing I did want to mention, I would be remiss if I didn't call out our partner Lenovo for helping us put this session together, and to just call out again Now Micro, who is now part of Trafera. We have all sorts of new capabilities internally to help support you, your Windows and your Microsoft environments. So please don't hesitate ever to reach out to us for any of the needs that you might have related to Windows, Microsoft, this transition, really anything. We're super excited to have the expertise of John and the rest of his team at really your disposal as our customers. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, John, for a great presentation. In that exit survey, there's a chance for you to let us know if you want to set up a time with John or other folks at Trafera to really walk through this Windows 11 transition. So make sure if you want some extra help, just specify in that exit survey. But that is all for us. We're going to say goodbye, turn our cameras off, but we will leave the exit survey up until everyone has a chance to complete that. And with that, our last coffee and convo of the year, I'll say happy holidays, happy new year, and we will see you in 2025. And thank you so much for joining us all year long. We really appreciate having you guys here and seeing, we don't get to see your faces, but we get to see your names every week. So thanks for joining us. And with that, I will say farewell. Thank you.